pick that up. Alright, so we'll start here with the joint. You'll notice, like in our videos, or some, and also in our literature, right, they show that you can do a zigzag pattern. So you can do a zigzag pattern when you install, I'll do it both ways, or you can do a bead. As long as you're hitting an inch on each side, 2 inch total, 16 mils, it's just up to you. Again, it's installer, it's your preference. I personally prefer to do a bead, a thicker bead at the joint, but then where you've got to get 2 inches or wider, that's where I'll do the zigzag, so that way I can kind of set the width a little bit better. The other thing is when you're installing this, you want to use tools that are the width of the joint that you want to achieve. So this is 2 inches. So if you have, say, a 4 or 6 inch spatula, right, as you're dragging this down the wall, it's going to spread to the width of the tool. So if you have a 4 inch tool, 6 inch tool, right, so if you had a 4 inch tool, once it starts to get 4 inches wide, it's like you're using the same amount of material to treat 2 joints. If you have 6 inch, it'd be like treating 3 joints. So, it's also a good gauge to know that you're hitting the right distance on each side of the joint. So I'll start with the zigzag. And I'll also do bead. Getting the feel for how thick you need to apply it, right, just comes with practice and experience. So it's a warmer day, so see it's dripping off just a little bit there. So, I keep 2 just so I can scrape off the excess. I stop a little short of the joints, generally just that way, if I'm pulling a little thick, I've got some room, to keep going and minimize waste. All right, so we've got some varying thicknesses here. So with this excess, what you can do is spot treat the fasteners in the area that you're working.
Is there a minimum distance you have to go on those? Or?
No. Okay. We just, if I'm doing an observation, what I'm looking for is around the fasteners is a monolithic void and pinhole free. So that's pretty good. Look, on some jobs, do an observation, right, and I'll come out and I'll see, this around the fasteners. Nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just more than you need. You're not really adding any value as far as the performance of the system. That's good too. All right, so now we've got some varying thicknesses here on the wall. So right here, you can see a little bit of the blue letters coming through. And right here, it's much thicker. I already know that that's going to be on the thicker side of the requirements. So let's drop down. All right. So using your mill gauge, how this works. So since we know we want to get it a minimum of 16 mils, we're going to use the side that has 16 mils in there.
Do that for you.
Thank you. All right, so minimum 16 mils, so we're going to be pressing this side into the wall because we want to see if we hit at least that. As you'll see, so I'll start with the thinner area. So here where I can see the blue letters kind of coming through. Let's see what that comes out to. So that's 16 mils. So the last tooth that has material on it is where you know your thickness is. So that's what 16 mils looks like. That's right here. So we can see right here we're much thicker. So let's see what that thickness is. And I like to measure close to where the joint is, because that is the area that's most vulnerable.
Mm.
Right? Further away from the joint, right here in the middle of the field, right, this isn't going to leak. Closer to the joint, you know, it's kind of the critical area where a problem's going to show up if something's wrong. So here, let's measure here. We're really good.
You always go parallel with the joint, or can you go across the joint?
So for this to be accurate, the reason I did it that way is because there's a little bit of a lip there, so it wouldn't be an accurate reading. So this, 26 mils. So, you know, you may decide, you know, if it's a lot of that thickness down the wall, you may decide it's worth it to come and try and pull it down a little further and get a little bit more out of the joint. Like I said, so the last tooth that's got material on it, 26. So that's why I'm saying, you know, if you're pulling 22s or 16s, in my opinion, you know, your labor is worth something too. But you don't want to be under 16, right? So, you know, if you're under 16, you got to fix it. But you know, most likely what you're going to be dealing with is getting used to what it looks like, you know, what the acceptable range is. You don't want to just use that, but that's just a good idea while you're working, and then you come and you verify what you did with measuring the mill thickness. Any questions with using the tool and, you know, checking the thickness? So
Can we order those also?
you can request them. You know, we don't set, we give them away. But yeah, sure, yeah. All right. So another way to treat the joint. So like I was saying, using the excess, not joints, but the fasteners, you can use the excess, or you know, just decide what's more efficient. You just have someone come along. You still have to strike it. So you can just have someone come along and just strike those as you go down the wall. You might find it's a combination of, as you pull down the joint, the excess that you get, you know, you treat what you can. And then, you know, you come back afterwards and you spot treat what you've done. And also the same goes for any misdriven fasteners or hole, you know, so if you're screwing in, you know, you can leave the screw in, but even if you withdraw the screw and you've got a hole, you treat it just like a fastener.
Mm.
So right here, example, so if I was doing observations, stuff like that is what I would, you know, call out. You know, it looks like there's a little bit of a void there. That's why I'm saying you want to be in the mindset that this is an air barrier. You know, so even if you're looking at conditions and you think, oh, you know, water's not going to get in there, it's going to flow down the wall, there's a protection, it saves around the soft or something. But still, if air can leak, it's not an air barrier. All right. So now we will treat some rough openings. I'm going to move these tools out of the way for just a second. So this porous prep is an optional surface treatment for the raw cut edges of the gypsum. Before you guys got here, I had a masonry brush. I went through and I cleaned it really well. Tried to knock off all the powder, you know, as best I could. It's in the back bar.
You found it? One.
So, you know, one way, you know, before you show up to a rough opening, you know, maybe have someone go around, clean them up. It's a good idea anyway, regardless of what you do. And, you know, try and knock as much of this dust off so you don't have loose dust acting as a bond breaker. And then you can apply to it. If you find that you don't like it, you know, if as you apply the material and you're dragging it down, it's just rolling up with powder on the back side of it, use this porous prep, and I applied that to half. It dries pretty fast on a day like today. It's going to dry in about 30 minutes. You just apply it to the raw cut edge. And what it does is it just keeps it from being so powdery. So I did it here. You know, it's a little less. Makes your life a little easier. But I'll let you I'll let you see both ways. I'll apply to both. The other thing that I did is I kind of went through here looking for any gaps over a quarter of an inch, something you want to look for before you start an area. So, you know, I identified, if you see in here, like the framing, there's a little bit of a gap. You're going to find it's just easier, you know, instead of trying to wrestle with the liquid flashing, you know, just to go ahead and have some backer rods on site that you can grab and stuff in. Same thing right through here. It's going to happen. You know, your joints here are pretty tight, pretty good, you know, but inevitably, you've got to cut, you know, you're going to have greater quarter inch or greater in your joint. So, let's say, do y'all know about where the window's going to sit?
I think it's that back.
What's that?
Back.
This was, so this was half inch. So I normally have quarter inch on out, so I cut this, I had a razor blade, I cut it in half. There's the window going to be sitting maybe like right here. I know it's a little bit of an outie, right, because you got the metal block.
The window actually sits now, so what we're missing on this right now is we're missing the 12-gauge flashing like you see
Like
up
there,
here,
yeah.
opening.
Okay.
So that's something else that we want to throw into the discussion.
Sure.
You know, because we're talking with architect of how we're going to do the install. So that's going to be a conversation with Darren and us and the architect as to how that's going to get installed.
Do you think that that detail's going to change, or you're just going to discuss how you achieve?
The original detail was for that to be on in between the dense element and the framing.
Right.
And so now what they're thinking is it's going to be easier for Lasco to install it over the top. They're saying, okay, let's go ahead and install it over the top.
Okay.
But you know, getting to the Dens Defy system, do they come in and install that right before, get it perfect, you know, or do they install it after the fact and come back and do the Densify again at the opening?
Sure.
So it's just food for thought on that.
Any kind of box, wood, metal box that are going to be in the window, it's recommended that they be in place first before you treat the joints, so that you would incorporate that in. So like, let's say this was Den's element right here. You know, our recommendation would be come, wrap it, and then go into the rough opening beyond where the window's going to sit.
Wrap it
With the liquid flashing.
with the liquid.
You could do it with this as well, but I was, you know, I feel like this is a lot easier since you've got a lot of changes in plane rough opening. You know, with this, there's a lot of cutting and lapping and special cuts. It's tedious, complex. This is, you know, as long as you get 16 mils monolithic void and pinhole free, it's much easier to achieve a, you know, quality installation. So, butts aren't in here, but you know, the general principles will apply. So, you know, let's pretend, you know, we've got this line here, so let's just say, you know, the window's going to stop here. So I'll go just beyond, you know, where that's going to sit into the rough opening. So what I'll do, apply a bead, you know, right on the cut edge in the joint, and then kind of a zigzag pattern. Okay. Through. notice here, particularly where you've got a change in plane, using a straight edge tool, right? You can see that, you know, it gets drug a little thin whenever you got these straight edge tools. That's where having some chip brushes, and you'll notice I cut about half the length off so it's a little stiffer down to the bottom. It makes it really easy to just come. And you won't have to sit there and fuss with it. And, you know, particularly here in the joint, again, where you have a change in plane, you know, making sure that you've got a monolithic voice and pinhole treatment of the liquid plastic. You'll notice the brush is almost easier to work even on the straight edges in some conditions to kind of smooth it out. You get 2 inches. So this brush itself is also, you know, 2-inch brush. So you'll know that you have, you know, at least 2 inches. And notice, you know, I cleaned this really good. This was a cut edge that I did not treat. I didn't really have a hard time with it. Yes. So that's why I say, you know, I'll let you see it both ways. I personally think if you come and clean it really good, you don't need to, but just so you know, if you're getting feedback from your guys in the field and they're saying, man, it's a pain on these cut edges, then you might just want to go ahead and get some of this porous prep. So now, let's continue coming around. I put a bead in the joint. So, you know, the critical areas that you want to be concerned with are this joint, you know, this joint here, really all the joints. Working the material, you know, getting it solidly in that joint. So one thing that I didn't do that I missed, right, there's a gap here. You know, we'll try and treat it, and, you know, that's what, probably a little over 1/4 inch. You'll see how that goes for you. This right here, I'm just doing entirely with the brush. You know, I didn't start it with this, so you can see. not treated, and it's not difficult at all to work with. Cleaned properly. You got a little bit of backer rod stick up, so that'll need to be touched up. Same thing here. Questions?
Like that. So if we go with face, then all we have to treat is just the screws or the pins or whatever.
So either way, our recommendation would be, from a coordination perspective, is to have the box in first before you treat.
So we'll look like that still angle right there. Have that in first too.
Yes.
Because he's saying we can put that over the face of the sheathing,
right?
Not between the framing and the sheathing.
Right. So either way, for us, that we treat that at the bottom.
Have it on first before we treat the opening. I got you.
Right. Not the sheathing.
Right.
Yeah.
Shit.
So now, I think the next.
If you put that on first, how are you gonna get the screws? How you gonna?
Well, you'll be sealing, wherever it's covering up, you're going to be sealing all the way around it, so it'll be encapsulated and sealed.
Now, you were talking about unpunched studs in the windows. In this case, since the window is going to be on this side, will we still have to cover the holes?
So if the window, it's going to be a ½ inch to an inch away from this punch, I would say no. You don't. That leaves you enough room, properly to seal.
Right.
If the window, say, like butted right up against it,
That makes
then
sense.
you okay. All right, now we're going to talk about making the connection with similar materials. So you're going to want, I cleaned this with the masonry brush. I cleaned it really good. The quartz is really critical for a lot of material. Just clean it good, get the dust off. This is particularly dusty. Obviously you just got done cutting drywall around here, it's going to happen. This stuff sticks pretty good. So and once you get to the end, or you've got to overlap pieces, right? You want them to be overlapping just 2 inches.
No, not yet. I did your chop.
to press in place, and you want to have a roller so you can get consistent application pressure all the way the entire length of it. Then once you do that, you'll come, and then it's 1 inch and 1 inch. So 1 inch onto the sheathing, then 1 inch onto the transition membrane all the way around.
Just go 2 inches.
And you also do it at the seam, where you splice them together. So here, you'll notice, like right here, I see that. Instead of fussing with it, I know I'll just come back with the brush. Same thing like right here. You know, once you get in this where it changes, it's
Everything is 16 mils, right? Thickness?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have to go past it, would be the liquid.
All right. Check the thickness. Here. So that's 22.
Yep.
So say that's a pretty good thickness, in my opinion. You know, where I would leave it. I wouldn't try and thin it out or drag it down. You can check in multiple places too. Around. Check it on the sheathing too. 24? Yep. And we'll check here. Here, let's check on the metal. It's flat. Check close to the joint. That's 30, you know, probably over 30, actually. All right. I've got quite a bit of material left. I'd like to use it up. You know, you want to practice. Someone want to grab it and practice while I'm here?